customary time machine, and I call this meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll have the invocation.
Our Father in heaven, we thank Thee for our time together here tonight. Grateful for the opportunity that we have to live on this earth, to share in the joys of life together. We're thankful for the privilege and the blessing that we each have to live in the United States of America. We're thankful for the Constitution and for government of all levels. Here tonight, we ask a special blessing upon our local government leaders here in 29 Palms. Help them to make wise decisions based upon sound judgment. Bless them with courage and strength to do what is right. Help our community, help us to each help our community as well, to be a bastion of safety and strength to all who live here. We pray for Thy Spirit to be here in our meeting, that everyone who is participating will have something positive to take away from it. And we say and ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And I apologize, that was Elder Nathan Niles from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Roll call.
Councilmember Click.
Here.
Councilmember Mintz.
Here.
Councilmember Beldering.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wright.
Here.
Mayor Ogilvy.
Here.
All present.
And there are no closed session announcements. Any changes to the agenda, City Manager?
None, but unfortunately, prior to the meeting, we had some technological challenges, unforeseen. So the meeting will not be live streamed, but it is going to be taped tonight.
And it'll be posted at a later time? So there's no reason I need to read that portion then. So now we're going to go to awards, presentations, appointments, and proclamations. City's newest employees.
Good evening, council members, Madam Mayor. I'm here tonight to introduce our new staff members to the park maintenance crew. I'd like to start with Jorge Morongo. He's an 11-year resident of 29 Palms. He's a proud father of 2 children, one attending COD and his recently graduated son attending CMC, wants to be a fireman. He was previously with the Marine Corps Ground Combat Center. He was a aquatics facilities operator and general mechanical technician. So he's going to be a great asset to our operation. I look forward to seeing him grow with our organization. Nathan Yantes grew up here. He's the son of a retired Marine Master Sergeant. He graduated from 29 Palms High School. He participated in park and rec programs throughout his life, so he's really proud to be a part of the maintaining of our excellent park system. So I look forward to a long and prosperous career for both these gentlemen, and thank you.
And we have a proclamation for Mental Health Awareness Month, something that is near to and dear to me as a healthcare professional, and I like to refer it as mental health wellness. Okay, and the proclamation reads as follows. Whereas each May we raise awareness about the importance of mental health and its impact on the well-being of all Americans, including children, adults, families, and communities across our nation. We also give thanks to the dedicated mental health providers whose service and support improve the lives of so many Americans. We stand in solidarity with those experiencing mental health conditions, renewing our commitment to provide them with the support they need and deserve. Whereas, even before the pandemic, millions of Americans were experiencing stress, trauma, anxiety, and heightened levels of depression. The COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated those conditions, creating an unprecedented mental health crisis across our country. Communities of color, frontline workers, healthcare workers, and individuals with eating disorders have been disproportionately impacted. The rate of depression across the country has more than tripled compared to the rates in 2019. Whereas mental health challenges among our youth have also been particularly acute due to disruptions in routines, increased social isolation, and learning loss. Research has shown that social media plays a central role in increasing mental health challenges among young people, especially young women. Emergency department visits for attempted suicides among girls in 2021 increased by more than 50% compared to 2020. American Indians, Alaskan Natives, Black youth, and LGBTQ plus youth also face a disproportionate risk of suicide. Whereas each of us has a vital role in supporting our fellow Americans living with mental health conditions. Learn the warning signs of emotional distress and suicide. Engage effective loved ones in supportive dialogue. Fight the prejudice and negative attitudes that discourage those in need from seeking mental health support. Above all, let us collectively ensure that all children and adults experiencing mental health challenges are treated with compassion, respect, understanding that they deserve. Now therefore, let it be resolved that the City of 29 Palms, California does hereby proclaim May 2022 as Mental Health Awareness Month and encourage all citizens to take actions in helping to strengthen our mental health in our communities and our nation. Okay. Now, a presentation by San Bernardino County Fire Department Chief Dan Muncy.
Madam Mayor, Assistant Chief Scott Tuttle will be giving this presentation.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. Chief Muncy regrets he can't be here tonight, but I'll be here presenting on his behalf. So tonight we want to talk about the county fire budget and FP5 and how FP5 ties into our budget. So as you know, FP5 stands for Fire Protection Zone 5. It was a special tax that was approved in the mid-2000s in the city of the community of Hellendale. And then in 2016, the city of 29 Palms, San Bernardino, and Needles annexed into the fire district under FP5. So it was a funding mechanism to help pay for fire, rescue, and EMS services. In 2017, Upland came over under the same annexation under FP5. And then in 2018, the Board of Supervisors voted to expand FP5 over the whole fire district. So just to kind of give you a little background. So about county fire, most of you guys know this already, but just as a refresher and for people who don't know. So county fire is a fire district that serves San Bernardino County. We serve 19,200 of the roughly 20,000 square miles in the county. We also serve about 1.3 of the 2 million people that live here in the county. The fire district is divided up into 4 geographic zones. So the Valley Service Zone is, as it sounds like, the Valley, San Bernardino to basically the LA County line. The Mountain Zone goes from Crestline, the mountains near Cajon Pass, all the way to Big Bear. Then the North Desert Zone goes from the top of the Cajon Pass, as the LA County line on the west, Kern County and Nevada State line on the north, and then around Ludlow on the east. And then we are in the South Desert Service Zone. This is 9,000 square miles in our service zone that goes roughly from Yucca Valley to the Colorado River and from Riverside County line to I-40. So that's the area that we serve. Those service zones, the revenue that's generated in those service zones can only be spent in those service zones. So we can't take money from 29 Palms and send it to the Valley Service Zone. It has to stay here within basically the Morongo Basin and the river. We are a California Special District, so it's a very good point that I want to make is we're not a department of the county. We are a separate legal entity from the county. We are a California Special District, a fire district. And with that, we fall under fire district law. And that's how we're governed. In 2021, we responded countywide to over 140,000 calls for emergency services. And we do more than just put out fires. We also provide, you can hear my guys going now.
Was that queued up?
Yeah, exactly. Cue the sirens. They go to medical, rescue, hazardous materials. We have aircraft that we're in partnership with the sheriff, so we provide helicopter rescue service as well as fire suppression with the helicopter. We have tactical medics. We have a marine division. We actually have fire boats. We have 6 fire boats within the county. Lake Arrowhead, Big Bear, and out at the river. So we cover all risk. Any kind of emergency we respond to. Just to highlight the medical, every one of our fire engines has a paramedic on it. So all of our fire equipment provides advanced life support service. So the budget, what we came here to talk about. So like I said, the budget is, or the fire district is divided up into 4 service zones. Those are geographic zones. And before FP5 was expanded, we also had about 10 funding zones. We had FP1 through 6. We also had paramedic zones. So there was a lot of different tax zones and tax fees that were in our budget. And basically we consolidated them all into the 4 service zones and FP5. So this is a breakdown of how each service zone is funded by property tax, fees, contracts, and other revenue, county general fund support, and then FP5 in the total budget. So you'll notice the South Desert Service Zone, our property tax is $7.7 million is what we generate. Fees and contracts about $220,000. General fund support is a little over $2 million, and then FP5 is $9.8 million for a total budget of $19.8 million, almost $20 million to serve the South Desert Service Zone, those 9,000 square miles. Just looking at it quickly, you can figure out that FP5 is almost half of our budget here in the service zone. Contrast that with the Valley, it's about 14% in the Valley. So you can see that FP5 benefits the South Desert more than any other of our service zones. This is the 2021, 22, that's a typo up there, that should be 22, not 20. Budget year, so that's the budget year we're currently in. Currently, FP5 generates $42.7 million out of our roughly $25 million budget. This one breaks down how FP5 is split across the different areas. So on the far left, you can see The original FP5 currently generates 1.2 million in Hellendale/Silver Lakes. Needles, we get just under $500,000 out of FP5. Here in 29 Palms, it's about 2.4 million. And then San Bernardino, Upland, San Antonio Heights, you can see that. And then you go across. The board approved, that's the FP5 expansion. So if you look at the South Desert, you have Needles, 29 Palms, and then the expansion of 6.9 for a total of 9.8 like we saw in the last slide. Just backing up, well, I think I covered it. The percentage, I don't want to go through every one of them, but countywide, FP5 is about 19% of our budget. The 42.7 million is about 19% of our total budget. So here, just operationally, we're talking now. This is our number of stations per division. So the Valley Division has 23 stations, Mountains have 6, North Desert has 8, and the South Desert has 6. And as you could guess, if we lost half of our revenue, we would lose half of our fire stations. So we would go from 6 stations down to 3 stations. Here is an interesting slide. It takes all the calls that we run and divides them by the number of firefighters we have. So here in the South Desert, our average firefighter runs about 233 calls, which doesn't sound like a lot until you compare it to Chino, Ontario, Rancho Cucamonga, where they're 88, 145, and 145. And then if you take half those staffing away, if we lose half of our funding, they're going to run 439 calls instead of 233. And you can see just how our staffing levels relate to each other. The Mountain, they have fewer stations, but they also run fewer calls. The Valley has more stations, but they run a lot more calls. So it's just a function of number of calls divided by number of personnel. Response times. Obviously, if we lost 3 stations, our response times would go up. So average right now in our service zone is 10 minutes and 36 seconds, and it would go to 18 minutes and 45 seconds. That 10 minutes and 36 seconds is a little misleading because here in 29 Palms we don't have a response time of 10 minutes. What you have to remember is those calls out on Highway 62, out on the 40 freeway, I-15, the calls take us 45, 60 minutes to get to. You have to have a lot of 5-minute calls to get your average down from a 60-minute call. Nonetheless, fewer stations, longer response times on average. This is just our staffing again, just kind of to show if we reduce staffing, it would go from 51 fire suppression personnel in our division down to 27. So the South Desert Service Zone currently, and this one, I'm going to save Station 18 and 44 for last because I have some updates on those. But currently, Station 32 in Needles, we have 3 people every day, 24/7. And one of them is always a paramedic. The same in Joshua Tree. Yucca Valley, we have 3 people on the fire engine, plus we have 2 ambulances with 2 people each, for a total of 7 people at that fire station. And then Station 42 on the Mesa has 3 on the engine and then 2 on the ambulance, for a total of 5. The reason I wanted to wait and talk about 18 and 44 last is because we're increasing our staffing at those 2 stations. So in a week and a half, on May 21st, Station 18 in Havasu is going to go from 2 people to 3 people every day, which, as you can see, is our standard. So that was the only station in the whole county that only had 2 people, bringing that up to our standard of 3. And in 29 Palms, we're getting 2 people back. If you remember, a couple of years ago, we had an extra vehicle at the station here with 2 people on it. That's coming back starting on May 21st. The reason we can do that is with some budget tightening, being very conservative with our spending, looking for efficiencies. We've been able to exceed our reserves and increase our reserves so that we can have a little extra money to add staffing. Obviously, we're right there at that tipping point, so any change in our budget, any revenues don't hit predictions, or if we lose funding, that's going to be the first unit to go. but I'm excited to have that second unit here in 29 Palms. My long-term plan is to make that also a 3-person unit and then staff the Lear station. So this is the first step in that direction. So service zone, just some more operational stuff. Like I said, if we lose FP5, if we go from 17 every single day in the Morongo Basin down to 9, average response times are going to increase. We might lose one of our ambulances in Yucca Valley. And then special operations, excuse me, like our boat staffing on the river, like Havasu and Needles, we would lose that. Just some more impacts. The first bullet point there about fires in the Morongo Basin, we operate in a regional concept. So no one fire station is going to be able to handle all the calls that it gets. If we get a structure fire, a house fire, we get 3 fire engines. So you're going to get 3 fire engines here in 29 Palms, just like we would get 3 in Joshua Tree and 3 in Yucca Valley. So they all work together. They all come together to fight those fires. If we only have 3 fire stations, then 1 structure fire, we don't have any more fire engines left. So just to kind of illustrate how we work operationally. And then that obviously is going to increase property loss. It's going to increase risk to the public and to our firefighters. And that concludes the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
Could you break it down as far as how many calls are actually for fires and how many for medical?
I do. I don't have those stats with me. I sent them to the city manager a couple of months ago. He and I got together, and I can tell you just off the top of my head, we roughly run about 75 to 80% medical, about 7% are fires, 7% traffic collision, and then the balance is other calls, public service, investigations, those types of calls.
Thank you. Any other questions?
All right.
So if I may, just want to thank Chief Tuttle and thank the council for your leadership, working with the county. I know in your conversations with Chief Muncy and with Chief Tuttle, hopefully that Lear station can be realized. So I think which would be great for the community of Indian Cove, for Desert Heights and others. So.
Yeah, and I do want to say one other thing. When I first came to the area, the one off of Lear Road was open because I went there a couple of times to get my CPR certification. So, that was really good times. I don't know if hopefully we can get back to being able to do that as well.
Yeah, that's my priority for the whole Morongo Basin is that station to get opened up. So as soon as we have the funding, we'll be there.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Awards, presentation, okay, no, I'm done with it, I apologize. Council comments and reports of meetings attended. Let's go to my right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I went to, actually did National Day of Prayer last Thursday. It was great attendance. Really appreciated it, but I always say I wanted more people. I think I won't be satisfied till I got like the whole city there. So, but it was still a great event. We did prayer at 7 and then again at noon at the flagpole. And then Pastor Washington did a special prayer online at 6:30. So it was great, a great day for the city. And then I did attend the Cultural Center's grand opening and the charging station grand opening all in the same day, Saturday. And kept visiting the farmers market. It's great out there. So just continue to visit, and Freedom Plaza is awesome. So thank you. That's it.
Afternoon, Madam Mayor. Sorry for my tardiness. Kids were where they're supposed to be, so I had to make sure they were where they had to be. I attended the CDBG committee meeting, and we decided on where those funds will go, and we'll present that later today. Also, I attended the what was it called, festivities at Freedom Plaza for Cinco de Mayo. Friday night, into the night, and I didn't make it to the Welcome Center in the morning Saturday because of the beer garden, so apologize for that. But I went back Saturday, it was just as good, so, Basin Plaza was, had a lot of things going on, but silent disco is more entertaining to watch than listen, I think, so. It was a good time. The Park and Rec staff, awesome job once again. That's all I got.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to first wish happy birthday to everybody in Twine Palms that's celebrating a birthday in the month of May. I went to the San Bernardino County Transit Authority meeting the first Wednesday of this month, and a lot of it is talk on getting right-of-ways for the Metro Link electric buses. And down there, you know, there's a lot of parcels that on the back roads, and there are a lot of them are commercial, so it takes them a long time to get them purchased, so it's taken us a while to get this going. I too attended the grand opening for the Joshua Tree National Park Cultural Center and the electric charging station. And I would like to welcome Jorge and Nathan to the City of Twine Palms employees, and great job once again, part on the fiesta and the May 7th. Was it May 7th? The second one?
6 and 7.
That was a lot of fun.
I also attended the grand opening for the cultural center, and then went over there and cut the ribbon for the charging station. 80% of the money came from the air quality, Mojave Air Quality Board, and so that's a good thing for the city, obviously. And anybody that has an electric car, please go use it. It's you can get a quick charge. Also attended the SCAG meeting. It was Southern California Association of Governments. And you know, everybody's been talking about housing. They also talk about housing and transportation, trying to marry both of them up. If somebody needs a large housing project, then they got to have the transportation to it. So they were talking about that. But they also obviously talked about CEQA, which CEQA for the holds up a lot of projects that people don't realize, and it's unless they change that CEQA or try to make some adjustments to it. And as they said, every time they have to do an exemption to CEQA, that means there's something wrong with it. They need to fix it somehow. So maybe somebody was listening. Softball season's over. Our high school team ended up taking third in the league. We lost our the first round of CIF in Newport Harbor. It was not a nice place to visit. I wish we'd have won, but we didn't. So, but they played well, and on to next season. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I also attended the National Day of Prayer, and it was awesome, as usual. Councilmember Bill Duane and I did the CDGB subcommittee, and I think the outcome with that as well as did also. And I attended the National Park ribbon cutting ceremony, the charging station ribbon cutting ceremony, and my favorite, I threw out the first pitch in the opening season for baseball, and enjoyed that. So that is it. Oh, I'm quite sure it was. I'm ready for the Angels. I know I am. I'm still waiting to hear from them. All righty, consent calendar. All matters listed. All matters listed under the consent calendar are to be considered routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar, considered separately by the City Council. The public will be given an opportunity to comment on the consent calendar items prior to the City Council action. And we're gonna waive the reading of the ordinance and approve the reading by title only. Is there anyone from the council who wants to pull an item from the consent calendar? Anyone from the public who would like to pull anything from the consent calendar? Then I am looking for a motion.
I'll move the consent calendar. I will abstain from item number 10. It has to do with Project Phoenix, Freedom Plaza, possible conflict of interest.
I'll second.
Councilmember Mims.
Aye.
Councilmember Villering.
Aye.
Councilmember Klink.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wright.
Aye.
Mayor O'Gilvy.
Aye.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you. Now we're on to. I apologize, just a second. Okay. Adopt a resolution for the intention to initiate an amendment of the California Public Employees Retirement System known as CalPERS to provide partial service retirement for the miscellaneous retirement group.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. In the staff report this evening, staff is recommending that the City Council adopt the attached resolution of intent to declare the city's intent to approve an amendment to the contract between the city and CalPERS to provide partial service retirement for full-time local miscellaneous employees who meet the normal retirement age and service requirements pursuant to Government Code Section 118, partial service retirement. Also, upon adoption of the resolution of intent, City Council authorize the city clerk to certify the copy of the resolution, then authorize the city clerk to sign the certificate of compliance with Government Code Section 7507, then conduct the first reading of the ordinance, which may be held on the same day this resolution of intent is adopted, which is today. Just by way of a little bit of background, this is just one thing in our tool belt from an employee perspective. Currently, CalPERS, California PERS, Public Employee Retirement System, is the city's retirement program. Currently, right now, there is two ways that you are viewed from PERS: as an active employee, which most of us are, or you are a retiree. And as a retiree, you can come back as a retiree annuitant. You have to separate from the city after retirement, I want to say for 120 days, and then can come back and can only work up to 980 hours a year as a retired annuitant. This just adds another tool in our tool belt for potential retirees that are considering continuing to work. So by way of example, you could, and this is a hybrid approach to it, quite frankly. You could retire, okay? You could declare that up to 60% of your retirement. So for easy math anyway, you could say, okay, as an employee, I want to retire, collect 50% of my retirement, then work 50% of the time. You are considered then an employee still. You still get benefits and service credits, but it's a kind of a hybrid approach to retain employees who potentially want to work a little longer part-time. So again, this is just another tool in our tool belt for employment, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? Okay. Open to the public? Any questions from the public? And
So I kind of, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I kind of like the idea because right now in our world, we're not finding very many people that want to work. So this would definitely help us keep good employees here working, even though it's for 980 hours, but at least we'll have bodies here.
Anyone else?
So I'll go ahead and then make a motion that we adopt a resolution of intention to initiate an amendment to CalPERS to provide partial service retirement for the miscellaneous retirement group.
Do we need to authorize the stuff all that?
You could just make the motion authorizing all 4 items with
And authorizing all 4 items.
I'll second.
You could read them all, but yeah.
Roll call.
Councilmember Villering.
Aye.
Councilmember Mims.
Aye.
Councilmember Klink.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wright.
Aye.
Mayor O'Gilvy.
Aye.
Approved 5-0.
Okay. And next we have amendment to the developmental code, development code, chapter 19.41, vacation home rental.
Madam Mayor, I wanted to give you a kind of a summary of what transpired to date and what's before you this evening. This is a request to review and approve amendments to Chapter 1941, Vacation Home Rental of the Development Code. The applicant in this case is the City of 29 Palms. A little bit of background: in 2021, the City Council established an ad hoc committee to review the existing regulations governing vacation home rentals. That included 2 councilpersons, 2 commissioners, and 3 members from the public. The committee met 9 times over 5 months from September 2021 until January of 2022. Planning Commission reviewed those recommendations at a study session on March 1st, 2022, and included them with some modifications. City Attorney reviewed the changes marked up by staff. Changes were then heard by the Planning Commission on April 5th, 2022, and voted 2-1 to approve, but since the majority of the Planning Commission was not present, the changes come to the City Council without a recommendation. Changes presented in your packets today are in track change mode, so you can see how it's changed. You can see kind of a cleaned up version of it, and we also included the ad hoc committee markup as well. So the major changes proposed is the overall cap on the number of vacation rentals. 12% is what was recommended by the majority of the Planning Commission. Of the number of detached single-family houses, that comes out to 695 houses. And just a little bit more background: vacation home rentals are only permitted in detached single-family houses, not attached single-family, not multifamily, and the other categories. So I just ran these numbers this morning. Currently, we're at 264 issued, 122 pending. Together, that's about 6.6%. 61 closed this morning. Other major changes proposed was an increase in fines, actually doubling fines for disturbance and safety violations. So for the first violation within a 12-month period, the penalty is increased to $500. Second violation, $1,000, and the third violation, $2,000. There is a separate set of fees for operating without a license. For the first violation, it's a warning to the owner, but for the second violation, the penalty is $2,500. And then for the third, it's $5,000, and then followed by $5,000 per day if the rental operations do not cease. Procedural minor nuisance violations have the standard code enforcement fine, so that's $100, $200, $500. Another major change is it gives the Community Development Director the authority to suspend a vacation home rental license based on the severity of the violations. Under due process, the owner can appeal that decision to the Planning Commission at a public hearing. Other changes proposed, we'll kind of run through these quickly. Language concerning signage on vacation home rental, that was deleted. It was seen as duplicative of the requirements that are already in the sign code. Same for animals, that was deleted. Language is already in the animal keeping section of the development code. The language concerning parking of vehicles on site was modified to specify overnight parking. A new requirement was added to require that vacation home rental is to be rented for at least 1 day in a year in order for the license to remain active. Would note that there's a inconsistency there in the code as it's currently presented with the minimum of 2-night stay requirements. So those have to be resolved by 1 night or 2 nights. New requirement was added to require a noise mitigation plan. A new requirement was added to require each owner or agent attend a class, live or virtual, on how to be a responsible vacation home rental host. A new requirement was added to perform safety and compliance inspection of the house every 3 years. A clarification was made to limit the number of parking on site, vehicles parking on site to the on-site parking spaces available. Definitions were added to define procedural and nuisance violations, disturbance and safety violations, and a noise mitigation plan. The terms maintain residential character was stricken since it could not be objectively defined. The term tenant was changed to guest, and the term permit was changed to license. Staff added a requirement to provide a floor plan with the rooms labeled. This is needed at the end as an evacuation route, but we wanted it up front so we could make sure the number of bedrooms was consistent with the assessor's data on the number of bedrooms. The items not included by the Planning Commission from the ad hoc committee reduced the minimum stay to 1 night. The majority of Planning Commission at the study session wanted to keep the minimum stay at 2 nights, and limit of number of VHRs a single entity or person could own. The majority of Planning Commission at the study session did not place for a limit. This project is exempt from CEQA per section 15301, minor alterations for land use limitations. And so our recommendation is to adopt. I'm sure there's a lot of members from the public to provide input here, but certainly to make consistent the overnight stay, whether it's 1 day or 2. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and Mr. Aquino was actually part of the ad hoc committee, so he might be able to share some light on that as well.
Any questions from the council?
Well, I do want to make a comment about, City Manager, the permit cost now, obviously, is some of the stuff we incorporate into this, doing a check every 3 years. As far as what it costs now to get a permit, those costs could be incorporated in the cost of the permit, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So once the council adopts the policy, what we will do from a staff perspective, bring back at a later date, accumulate the cost to administer, then adjust the permit fees.
That's all I have to comment.
Also, that will, the security thing we have going
That
on.
will be part of it.
Okay.
I have a question. This class, is it online class that they have to take?
It could be either, as it's
Okay,
been designed.
so
Some
who's
cities.
responsible for generating this? Is this something that already exists?
There are cities that already do it. I think it's Big Bear Lake is one city that does it. Some have it in person and some do it online. So it actually have to be city staff or we contract out.
Any other questions?
I'll wait till after.
All right. I'll open it to the public. Thank you. Jim? Appreciate it.
Oh, good, it works. Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Jim Krushat, and the reason why I wanted to come up and speak was I just wanted to reiterate some of the discussions that went on at the committee. I know 2 of you members attended. I attended all 9. A lot of work was done by a lot of people. A lot of information was gone over. We had a lot of discussions. When I walked into that meeting, I was for letting economic forces do what economic forces do well. I was not for a cap on the number of short-term vacation home rentals. However, the consensus of the committee was that we do have a cap, and I understood that. And in those discussions about the cap, we also said, we combined it with that we would limit the number of licenses that one entity could have. And the reason for this was, once you set the market and you've established it, and these licenses now have an economic value, I'd like to see more of those go to members of our community that own homes rather than institutional investors. One of the arguments against that was brought up, well, we don't do a limit on long-term home rentals and how many long-term home rentals an individual can own. The issue with that is that's kind of a false comparison because we don't have a limit on the number of long-term rentals that you can have in the community. You can buy as many homes as you want, make them long-term rentals, there's no limit. Now, if the council decided, yep, we want to go that way and not have a cap on short-term home rentals, I'll be all for that. And if you want to watch me, I'll do a cartwheel out the door. But it was the consensus of the committee to do a cap. And again, I want to reiterate, you're setting a market, and if you put it out there that, hey, the market's limited, but as an institutional investor, I can buy up as much of that market as I want. I think it's good for the community if we limit it to 2 or 3 licenses per entity. And that's the only reason. I'd just like to see more of that go to the community rather than to an institutional investor. And as an example, I can tell you that some of the research I've done with single-family homes purchases across the nation, about 1 in 5 right now are being bought up by institutional investors that have billions of dollars to invest into that community. They're turning them into rentals, they're turning them into, it's all part of a capitalist system, I understand that. But if you want to be free, if you want to be free market, then don't have a cap. Once you decide that you're not going to be free market, if you're going to put a cap, then again, I'd like to see more of those valuable licenses go to our local community than an institutional investor. And that's all. Thank you very much.
So Madam Mayor, members of the council, just one point of clarification. I think it was in a report, but just wanted to make sure that it's underscored. So there was two items that differed between the committee and the planning commission. I think one definitely was underscored as it relates to 2-night stay, but as Mr. Krushat said, was the second item. The committee recommended a cap on how many an entity can own. And so those were the 2 items that there was a disagreement between the 2 bodies, which ultimately needs to be decided by the council.
Thank you. Next is Devon Smith.
Hello. Sorry, I have never spoken at a city council meeting before. But ladies and gentlemen of the council, I would like to thank you for listening to our concerns and taking into consideration their intentions. I'm speaking in favor of stronger regulations on the short-term rentals here in 29 Palms. When I moved to 29 Palms after college, I'd like to admit that it was not the community I was used to. However, it was undeniable that there was in fact a sense of community here. A long-standing community, a community defined by those who made up its parameters. The stories, the lives, the feelings, the love, the hate, the shared interest in wanting to do what was best for their community. The issue that we are addressing here tonight is intersectional, but above all, about what it means to be a community. In April of 2019, Harvard Business Review published a research paper on the effects of increasing Airbnbs. The research stated that under the assumption that we show that a 1% increase of Airbnb listing is associated with a 0.018% increase in rental rates and a 0.026% increase in house prices. While these effects may seem very small, consider that Airbnb's over-year average growth is about 44% right now. At the time of this paper was published, the number of Airbnbs has doubled since then. This is undeniably affecting our community. A single day doesn't go by where I don't hear about members of our community being displaced because they're unable to pay for their rents or their houses are being sold out from underneath them. This is where you as council members come into play. The power that you hold in this community is unquestionable. The data, the stories are there. It's up to you to do the right thing. The article concludes that according to our results, one way to reduce the latter effect while retaining the benefits of home sharing would be to limit how many homes can be added to the short-term vacation rental market. While there is an enormous amount of progress in the city, the progress doesn't always have to occur while leaving others behind. I'd like to conclude with one of my favorite quotes. I sit on a man's back choking him and making him carry me, and yet I assure myself and others that I am sorry for him, and that while lightening the load by all means possible, except getting off his back. This is your community, our home, your home, and I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next we have Susan Pablo.
Thank you for your time this evening. I'll try to be swift. It's a full room. In regards to minimum night stays, I would like for you to consider a one-night minimum stay mainly to eliminate oversight required by staff to kind of monitor 2 nights versus 1, and also allowing travelers and military families the opportunity to spend an evening in a VHR in 29 Palms versus potentially pushing them to another community in the Morongo Basin or not at all. Regarding inactivity, I refer to this as the use it or lose it clause. I think although set with great intentions to perhaps keep stale, excuse me, listings from getting stale or maybe some other purposes, it might have some unintended negative byproduct by potentially taking away long-term rentals, where if you maybe keep that clause but extend it out, then perhaps you have homeowners that could stay in the house themselves, capital improvements, or be able to maybe rent long-term stays for failure, be at risk of loss of their permit just over 12 months. Regarding ownership cap, that's really interesting after listening to Mr. Couchot speak. It's actually only 30 entities that hold more than one VHR license out of the list. And of that, 19 are local owners. So predominantly, it's 2/3 of the number is actually local owners. So although, again, I think that's of good intentions, the reality is that it's locally owned community members, and we hope that, I hope that you're not going to penalize those of us who are here, locally owning and managing these homes. And also, some are just some suggestions for the ordinance. I think it would be advantageous to have some procedural guidelines for complaints and what the process should be for people, whether it's, call phone number first, wait, then, security, whatever the situation is. I think being in the ordinance will clarify that and kind of pay some dividends on the back end by not having staff have to unravel it at the end of the weekend. And then the last idea is, hopefully you guys will consider a TOT grant program. So the proposition would be to create a program for first-time homebuyers. These funds would be directly associated to TOT collection. You could earmark it for this project. I came up with some numbers that loosely, like 5%, for instance, should be about $85,000. That's a social project that other people could maybe foster engagement for guests and volunteer additional contribution from hosts and guests. So, thank you. Sorry for the long.
Elliot Baldwin.
Hello. I want to say a couple things. I agree with what the other gentleman said about capping the number of permits per owner. I think that would be good to encourage organic, sort of local development instead of commercial enterprise. And I also have some concerns about the phone number. There's part of this arrangement is that there's a phone number required to be posted every VHR, and it's the owner's number. You can call it with a noise complaint. There was some discussion at the last council meeting of how few people have ever called this number. I think it's only 4, which was used as evidence to say that there are no loud parties taking place. And I think there's a lot of confusion around this number in the community because the city website says you should call this number any time of day, 24/7, and they will log your complaint and forward it to the code enforcement. But then it's only working certain hours of the night, 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. on weekends. And first of all, the number is not posted on the signs. I think it should be. If people have a complaint, there's a loud party, they call the owner. The owner is obviously not going to report it to the city or code enforcement, so you guys would have no visibility on that happening. So I think we ought to have the hotline number posted, but then also the hotline needs to forward to the right place at the right time. So if you call at night, it can go to the private security. If you call in the daytime, it can forward to code enforcement. And I actually called this number a few days ago to see how it worked. And I got a dispatcher who answers. By the way, the dispatcher answers 24/7, which contradicts what the city website says. But if you call outside of their working hours, say I call at 5 p.m. on a Friday night, they don't log that call, and they don't respond to it, and they don't notify the city council that the call was ever even made. And if you leave a voicemail with this security dispatcher, they never respond to it, and they also don't log the voicemails. So we have a problem collecting data on actually how many complaints there have been. Just seems to be like some disconnect in the system between your contract with this Southwest security firm. So yeah, thank you.
Wayne Hamilton?
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank you all for considering this and looking at the long-term effect of the short-term rental. I don't know if you know, I work with the school district. I'm one of their homeless liaisons. I'm the person that gets a call when they'll put somebody out of their house. Okay? You're telling us that you have 6,000 homes here, telling us that you're going to do 12% of them, which is roughly little over 600 houses. You're about at capacity now of half of that. Is that correct? How many people have you put out of houses? Okay, these homes are not vacant that you're turning into Airbnbs. Okay, there's families living in them. There's families living in them that have nowhere else to go once they get out. Okay, because you guys are at 12%. I think Yucca Valley's at 10%. I don't know what the county's at right now, but they're pretty high. Okay, so all the affordable housing is just being used up. Okay, somebody said they can't find workers because people don't want to work. The people that did want to work are no longer here. Okay, you can't afford to buy a house. You can't afford to move into a house. There's no houses available. If you take a look on the internet, see how many houses you have available, because there's 300 houses that you're going to turn into short-term rentals, you're going to put somebody on the street. And I hope y'all consider that.
H. Benson?
Hello, City Council. I'm Heather Bessent. I helped you guys put together the very first set of regulations we had in 2015. I want to thank you for trusting the community and putting those regulations in place. I believe they have protected the community and culture and livelihood and lifestyle of 29 Palms compared to the rest of the Morongo Basin. I support many of the changes. I don't support all of them, but I did support all of them originally. I support the cap. I applaud you for approaching a cap. It's very tough. You did a great job on it. I still support a 2-night minimum for the original reasons. I support a limitation of vacation home rentals by a single person or entity, and I recommend that if you have a corporation or an LLC, you should check the legal entity identifier to make sure it's not the same person. I also have a concern with the use it or lose it activity. I'm the second person to get a vacation home rental. I'm VHR number 4. I don't know why I didn't get number 2. I'm a local. I live here. I didn't rent through the pandemic. I'm planning to rent it again. Yeah, okay, I'll rent it one night to keep it up. I'll go through that. But, I mean, like, I'm a legitimate user, and I understand why there's concern of that for people squatting, but I don't actually think that's a real concern. So I really think you should reconsider that and maybe tag it for next time. I support a TOT grant. Yes, prices have increased. I was just thinking, I almost bought a house down in Smoke Tree right before the pandemic for $170,000. House right down the street is now selling for $350,000. Like, again, prices have exploded and increased. We need to support the local community that we are increasing, and we are supporting with the local TOT tax. Like I said, I don't like all the new proposals, but I can live with them, just like the old ones. And that's kind of the way we needed to have it happen. I think you guys did a great job. I've talked to you guys before. I said regulation's good. We all go through the process of regulation. We learn a lot. I didn't want regulation in the beginning. I loved the comments that you made about how letting the free market happen. And as you go through it, you realize that we don't have the luxury of living in a free market. But we have to have some control and restrictions on the things that we love to create the community, to enable the growth, and to support locals, but also to take advantage of this new vacation home rental world. Finally, I just want to make a point that these new regulations, these shifts seem to favor more of vacation home rentals businesses. That was not my initial pitch to you guys. That's not my vision. I know, look at Joshua Tree, look at other places. Man, I see posts about optimizing my occupancy. I don't want us to focus on making it easier for those people, those investors to come in and have a negative impact on our community. But I want to support the locals who are part of it to help increase and enable folks from the outside to have a great desert experience.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Jonathan Hume.
Hi, Council. My name is Jonathan Hume, and I want to speak specifically on ownership caps. I favor ownership cap probably 4 or 6, and I'll tell you why. Because that is basically a mom and pop business. You know, a mom and pop business doesn't have to be 1, doesn't have to be 2. Now, is it 10? No way. That's not a mom and pop business. We could probably all agree on that. But a mom and pop business, is it 4? Oh yeah, it is. That's because that's the limit of what, like, literally mom and pop, a couple or a family can self-manage as a vacation rental mini business, you know. So I would support maybe consider a limit of 4 or 6. And that's all I wanted to say today. Thanks for your time.
Cindy Bernard.
I wasn't going to get up and talk because you all have heard enough from me already. But all I want to do is reply a little bit to Susan in that people that currently own permits don't need to worry because as far as I know, chances are good that it will all get grandfathered. Anybody currently having a permit, currently having 4 permits or whatever it is they have, you know, when they go to cure the regulation, they're going to probably end up grandfathering in anybody that owns that number of permits at this particular moment in time. So I don't think that people currently owning them would be endangered. I also wanted to just talk briefly, and thank you, Jen, you did a great job in talking to what we did on the SDVHR committee. I just want to talk briefly about the history of that use it or lose it clause. So I'm the one that initially proposed the use it or use it clause, and it actually came out of Susan's concern about what would happen if we had a cap and all of these permits that just never get used in the permits that are permitted, and said, okay, if we're going to have a cap, then maybe we have to put in a clause that says if you're not using your permit, it has to be released somehow. And that's actually how that came about. I don't know if it's absolutely necessary or if it's really going to operate, but you know, funny enough, that's why it's there. So that's all I have to say. Thank you guys.
Robert Bolger.
Yep. So anyway, I'm here to speak on the limits, I guess, of the number of Airbnbs you can own. You're looking at a corporate entity right here. I own 4 of them. I work 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, it's not easy. I sit here, I've sat at many of these meetings, and I hear all this negative. I spent all my life savings, I bet on 29 Palms, on all of you, and the city. I saw Project Phoenix coming. I see how the city operates. I'm all in. I put everything in. And I guess I'd like to see other people have that same opportunity. If they're willing to work as hard as I work, and my wife, who's sitting back here, we're supposed to be retired. But I guess it hurts my feelings
to hear a lot of the comments about, you know, I'm local too. You know, I'm not an LA investor, so that's it. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? I'll bring it back to the council. I'm sorry. Yes.
I know I had requested, but I think it probably fits now. And Master Johnson? She has one for general comments.
Oh, that's, I think it's for general comments, it's not about vacation home rentals?
It's about this, really.
Okay.
Is that okay? All right, thank you. I'm Master Johnson, and I am the president of Morongo Basin Arch. And I have 2 points to make. The first point is the cap. Because of the very nature of what we do, we are in the business of housing people that are homeless. And the demand has grown, and we've heard quite a bit about some really good cases where people are losing their homes because the prices have gone up, the owner wants to sell the house, and suddenly a family is calling us saying, we're homeless. What do you do? What can we do? The problem is, as has already said, there aren't enough houses available for the amount of people that are becoming homeless. And so, especially what's happening, of course, in Joshua Tree, where I heard is somewhere probably around 23% of it. So what's happening in Joshua Tree is there's so many people now being displaced from houses that they used to be able to stay in, especially if they were lower income. And so now where are they going to go? So they come here, and our prices are going up, and it's becoming more and more difficult to rent. So unfortunately for a lot of people, I'm saying you have to leave the area. You can't find anything here. If we were in the process right now of doing housing vouchers for the housing authority, and there's case after case where people simply can't find any housing. And so we're saying you have to look somewhere else. You can't find, they have 4 months to get this voucher. And if they can't find it here in our area, they're going to have to leave. And that's kind of what's at the sad point I want to make. I also brought actually for Joe Klink, who said he isn't sure where people are. I downloaded from websites scattergrams that shows where they are in the county, and you can see that. And then I also went to another one called Airbnb DNA, and it showed where they are in the city of 29. Now, I know it gave me a very high number, and I don't know if it's reflecting a broader area than 29, because it said there was 544. That doesn't sound like what you're saying. The second point I wanted to make is I live up in the Hanson tract, and I know there's more and more of the homes being converted to Airbnbs. And I've heard this argument before, and you need to keep in mind when you're approving these Airbnbs, is that we do not want to live on a street that's suddenly becoming a motel road. We want it to be residential. I moved to that area because of the view, and because it had a spectacular view, it was quiet, I could really experience the desert. Some of you know I have horses. So it's sad to think that we're suddenly going to become, my house is going to eventually maybe be surrounded by Airbnbs, and we're going to lose that. So please keep in mind where you're putting these Airbnbs, and I want to see a cap. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? And I'll bring it in.
So Madam Mayor, if I could address some of the comments that were there, please. Just so the council is aware, you haven't seen the draft budget yet, but what we have in the draft budget is I think approximately $100,000 in there for some transitional assistance because our TOT is so high. And I think this year, we're looking to crest $2 million for the first time. So we have a good budget, so we're looking from a staff perspective, given council's policy, is to put about $100,000. We don't have a program set up yet, but something to assist in this housing crisis that we're in, not stopping eviction, right? But something to like first-time home buyers program, maybe something like, giving some dollars for the delta that, because rental prices are going up, things to that effect. So that is what you're gonna see, and that will be a bridge. What staff is looking for is a bridge. As you're aware, we're working on the housing project, because staff here is loud and clear as far as this housing shortage. Mr. Clark and myself are working on this housing project, which the Planning Commission will see next month, behind City Hall. So that money could be some kind of a bridge for that. I'll follow up with the gentleman about the telephone line. We're always looking to improve and correct any deficiencies that are out there. But that was definitely a topic during the committee meetings. When somebody calls that number on the phone, and if the owner fixes the problem, we don't know about it. And so that is accurate. So when they call the number, they fix the problem, that's a data set that we just don't know. Operational issues we will address, so the use it or lose it thing will become more germane as we get closer to that cap, right? So, we don't want, what the direction was, we didn't want somebody to take up a license if whatever the number is, and just, arguments, say it's 500, right? And we're at 500 and there's 30 more people looking to get an application, but there's a bunch of people who don't use it, right? That was the idea behind that, to give them an opportunity. Then the AirDNA, that number, why that's higher, is zip code. So AirDNA grabs zip code, and as we know, Desert Heights, and I think, Joel, you may have to help me here, some of Wonder Valley even too, or maybe all of Wonder Valley is part of our zip code. So that's what that all captures.
Yes, just do a reading, you can see some emails.
Yes. Okay, this first one is from Allison Hendricks. She says, overall, I am very much in favor of the draft ordinance. I think increasing fines, capping the number of permits citywide, and implementing a training for hosts are all excellent recommendations. However, I do think the limit for non-use of a permit should be increased from 12 months to at least 18 months. For example, in the event a host has a busy upcoming year and decides it will be easier to rent their home long-term, they should be allowed to do so. If hosts become fearful of losing their permits due to not renting short-term, then they will rent solely short-term, thereby eliminating the chance for the home to be rented long-term. It is my understanding that long-term rentals are something many residents feel are in short supply. Putting a use it or lose it constraint will only lead to less long-term rentals. I appreciate the city's consideration. This is from Chuck and Heidi Hurd. What will it take for the city council to realize that letting STVHRs run unlimited is ruining the 29 Palms that most of us came to love, a quiet rural community? How many more people will have to lose their homes? Have any of you seen the number of posts on social media of people, families that have been given notice and are looking for homes? Have you talked to the school district, the teachers? How many schools will have to close? How many more people will have to turn down jobs because they can't find affordable housing? How many military families are now living apart because there is no housing available for them here in 29 Palms so they can live together as a family? What is that magic number that will make you all stop and think? The city is at approximately 6.5% of SFR that are permitted, licensed, or have an application pending. Using an average of 2 adults and 2 children per household, that is over 700 adults and 700 children with no possibility of living in the 29 Palms community and becoming long-term residents. That's 700 less workers and 700 less students in our schools and programs. That's the closing of one entire elementary school. Using some simple math, if the percentage of 12% is accepted, that would be 695 houses off the market for families to rent to become long-term residents of our community. Using the same average of 2 adults, kids per house, that is 1,390 less adults to live, work in our community, and 1,390 less kids in our schools and in our park and recreation programs. That is the closing of at least 2 schools in the city. There's a little bit more, but are the guest tourists going to put their kids in school here? Are the absent STVHR owners going to put their kids in school here and work at the businesses? They haven't thus far. A 10% cap is a compromise and still too high for our community. Many constituents would prefer 5 to 7. Wake up, do the math, it's simple math.
Permanent residents, community members are worth more in terms of community involvement, volunteering, and be able to know your neighbor than all of the STVHRs. Do what is right. Cap the STVHRs at 10% or lower. Take control of the city, and remember it's the residents of the city that vote for the council members, not all the absentee STVHR owners and their transient guests. Save our city and neighborhoods. The next one is from Deborah Shea. I support revisions to the recent STVHR ordinance. More specifically, I would like to see a density cap of less than 12%. I feel a cap of 12% is way too high. It is higher than any surrounding desert area. Caps are needed to rein in the problem of STVHRs and what they are doing to our neighborhoods. There should also be limits on the overall number of permits any single person or entity can own. These are not your average folks looking for a bit of income or the Marine who will relocate back to 29 Palms. These are businesses. They are commercial ventures. I don't think local zoning ever intended zoning in SFR residential neighborhoods to include hotels or hotel-like home businesses. These are not the same as an individual with a home business fixing coffee machines in his garage. As a permanent resident, I never expected when I bought my home that my retirement job would be the burden to document offending activity of STVHRs through photos, video, audio, and journals of the constant flow of strangers. The city hired a security guard to help with problems for long-term residents. Security guards are not law enforcement officers and have no enforcement abilities. The burden still falls on permanent residents to look after what's left of our neighborhoods. Since security guards have been hired, that already means there is a problem with STVHRs. Those problems could be solved by caps and density limits. The out-of-control growth of STVHRs is very similar to the changes Uber unleashed on the taxi industry or Amazon to retail. They pushed out local business and local home ownership. Where is the workforce going to come from when permanent homeowners are pushed out and there are no available homes to rent? And what part of TOT comes back to me for signage, security for my home, noise monitors, repair of my private road, repair of my private property, etc.? Or the time and the cost the city would have me monitor these STVHRs? What part of TOT is actually invested in schools, infrastructure, or first responders or local businesses? It's the permanent residents whose taxes go toward these services. We all know STVHRs can take their costs off the taxes. Give me permanent residents, the one who can plant flowers in their yards, who vote on local elections, or even care about local elections, who serve on committees of the Kiwanis or Rotary and giving back to 29 Palms instead of taking. Mostly I want to be able to spend a quiet desert evening with friends and neighbors, not hidden behind private property signs and recording devices just to exist here. Sincerely, Deborah Shea. Teeny Hood. I'm writing as a resident of 29 Palms and community member who lives in Indian Cove. I'm asking you to support reasonable limits and regulations regarding short-term vacation home rentals. It is the duty of the City Council to guide the city on a path of responsible growth and to consider the needs of both residents and for local business owners. This requires consideration of both the financial aspect as well as those that cannot be quantified, quality of life, and involved community, neighbors who look out for one another, feeling safe and welcome. When I made the shift from a long-term renter in the Morongo Basin to a homeowner, it was these qualities that convinced me that 29 Palms was where I wanted to build those roots. It's true that since purchasing my home, its value has increased, but it should be clear to anyone who is paying close attention that the increase in home values is not tethered with local economic realities. This is increasingly being recognized. Take this Fortune article, which specifically identifies San Bernardino County as a place with a housing bubble and one that increasingly resembles a market in 2007. There isn't data on how a large number of STVRs will exacerbate a recession or a market contraction or correction, and I hope this makes you all as nervous as it makes me. But in all honesty, I bought my home in 29 Palms over Joshua Tree in Echo Valley because I saw that the community here was something special and valuable, and I wanted to be a part of it. I've been saddened over the last 2 years to see those values overlooked and dismissed because they don't have an easily quantifiable financial value. I urge you to support a 10% limit on STVHR to limit the number of STVHR that can be operated by a single entity and to consider density limits. It's the job of the City Council to plan the long-term success of the city, to consider long-term economic growth and stability, and to protect the community values that make this a great place to live.
Just because these qualities can't be fundamentally quantified does not negate their importance and vitality to the importance of the city. This is vital. And we have Jennifer Ruggiero. Short-term STVHR permits tend to cluster in neighborhoods such as Indian Cove and Hanson area, impacting the quality of life for full-time residents. The majority of the Indian Cove STVHRs are within a 2 to 3 block radius, negatively impacting full-time residents with increased traffic, noise, litter, and light pollution. In addition to clusters affecting neighborhood quality, they are also impacting the availability of quality long-term housing. This is having an adverse effect on area businesses. Reserve 29 Palms acknowledges that there isn't sufficient hotel and motel accommodations to meet the needs of visitors to 29 Palms and Joshua Tree National Park. STVHRs are a great way to meet this need. However, limits are necessary to protect the character of our desert neighborhoods. So they're restricting the number of VHR permits issued. Preserve 29 Palms suggests 10%. Limit future STVHRs density in neighborhoods and roll back STVHRs in already impacted neighborhoods. Preserve 29 Palms suggests 1 STVHR per 4 block radius in neighborhoods where lot size is under 2.5 acres. And let the city continue to provide a dedicated phone line for STVHR complaints and create a log of complaints on a publicly accessible webpage. Limit the number of STVHRs one person can permit and have a financial interest in. Corporations should not be allowed to permit STVHRs. Preserve 29 Palms recommends a 2 permit limit based on financial interest and or corporate ownership. Preserve 29 Palms suggests that the 29 Palms City Council joins other communities such as Cathedral City, Rancho Mirage, and Palm Desert in addressing the current concerns of its residents by revising the policy to protect the long-term rental market, the fabric of the community in our neighborhoods, and the quiet desert life we treasure in 29 Palms. And then Darcy Phillips. I wish for a minimum cap of 12% permitting STVHRs relative to the total number of single-family housing elements in the city of 29 Palms. I would prefer a lower limit of 10%, such as we recently established by Yucca Valley. I wish to see a limit of 2 permits issued by one entity in any given calendar year, whether listed as individual, an LLC, or corporate interest. I am in favor of regulating density. It has been proposed that STVHR permits not be issued next door to each other. The character of a neighborhood changes when there is no to little interaction between or recognition of your neighbors. A friend in Joshua Tree recently reported to me that her mailman told her of the 5 houses on her street. She was the only one receiving mail delivery since all the other houses are STVHR rentals. Is this what you want to see happen in 29 Palms? I point out these particular issues because I believe they are the ones in the proposed ordinances that are in dispute. I support the other provisions as proposed without comment. I look forward to a thoughtful consideration of my points. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Great job. Okay, bring it back to the council for discussion.
Madam Mayor, would you like to hear some of the comments from the VHR committee that we voted on? So obviously we did 9 meetings over 5 months. Councilman Bill Ray and I chaired the event, as I'll put it. Some at the end, towards the end of the committee, we started taking some votes, and we voted. One was, do you want cap? It was 6-1 that yes, we wanted caps. So then it was brought up, do you want to recommend to, these were recommendations that were going to be made to the planning commission, and then of course it would be recommended to us. Do you want a 7%? And the vote was no. Do you agree that there needs to be some kind of system to deal with permits that are still active and not being used to extend the period of time? The vote was yes. Limited number of persons or entities that can own vacation home rentals. It was yes. Whether or not we want to consider density restrictions, it was no. And this, I have a question for Travis on this one. Whether or not we want to discuss radius notification increase to 1,000 feet, and the answer was yes. And I guess the discussion of that was the rural areas where there was 5-acre lots, obviously if at 300 feet, the person wouldn't be notified. So is it possible, if, you know, after we discuss, when we discuss this, is depending on where it's located, like in other words, if it's in the middle of a residential area, in the whole area has all houses 300 feet, would everyone be notified within 300? To distinguish between the two, or was that something that would be hard to do?
Well, it has to be 300 feet from the perimeter of the parcel.
Right.
So it's not a house centroid in the middle of the parcel, it's 300 feet.
Right.
One of the issues is you have, take Indian Cove, you have houses on quarter-acre lots, and then right next to them, you have a 100-acre parcel next to it. So it's not like the city is consistent density across the route. There's a big variation because we have, you know, a lot of developed tracts, and then in between them we have large expanses of land.
So in other words, it needs to be either one. Either it has to be a set number. You wouldn't be able to distinguish whether or not, because there's those types of things in there. You'd rather, as far as doing this in an even amount, you'd want one number.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, I know we were having a conversation with City Attorney Munoz, that you know, one of the challenges is going to be you know, the non-consistency out there of noticing, right? So, you know, for land development, for home occupation permits, and there's probably other notifications. It's the state requirement of 300 feet.
300 feet.
And so if we change that, then there could be, you know, there's challenges of consistency that's out there. Point taken from the committee, but just wanted to make note of that.
Right, I just wanted to, it was voted on, so I just want to mention, it was only 4-3 votes, so it was, I think it was brought up because of that reason, talking about larger parcels. So, that's what there was, like I say, a lot of discussion, throughout those 9 meetings. Sometimes it went for way in left field, all the way back down to where we needed to be. And there's a couple of concerns that I have, is that, let me ask about the grandfathering. Now, if we change this ordinance, that everyone who's got a license permit before this, they would still go under the old rules?
Well, so that will come back to another council meeting. You will have to discuss, and maybe Mr. Munoz can kind of correct me or piggyback off of this, but the council will have to figure out what you want to deal with on these non-conforming uses if you put someone currently in non-compliance with the new code.
Okay, so in other words, and maybe I guess one of the things I'm asking about is because of the use it or lose it clause. If we go with that, we have some people who have been in there, and if we say,
yeah, so that one very specifically are those that, and I think I confirmed this with Mr. Clark, what's in the code is one night keeps you active, right? So, you know, we got to figure out operationally, and I think we started looking at this through the TOT reporting. So if you report basically $1, if you will, you know, that will constitute one night. So that would keep it active. Yeah, if there's other guidance on that, but that's how we were looking at it. So if you reported in a year $0, and then per that policy, then you would lose your license, or the next person in line would get that license, if we were at the cap.
So I don't know if you want the rest of my comments, if you want everybody to chime in on what I said about the committee, and then, I don't know, you know, Steve was there, so maybe, and then we can discussing each one of these, I guess, and we'll do it.
I guess we can give everyone an opportunity to speak. Councilmember Buildering.
I have no comments. We already discussed everything, so when we get down to the actual, what we can decide, I'll speak then. Everything's covered.
Well, then I'll start that conversation right now.
Okay.
This one night that they can be open means that they don't have to do short-term rentals for the rest of the year, and they take that permit away from somebody that really wants to have it. I just can't see that, number one. I myself would like to have a 500 cap, and we don't look at that cap until the census in 2030 to decide if we want to raise that cap, so that we can at least let our homes, the building, increase. And let's get our population back up to where we have more residents than Airbnbs, if you understand what I'm saying there. Okay? Mr. Bolter, I don't consider you a corporation, you and your wife.
Thank you.
You're
Just a hard worker.
You're great.
Thank you.
But I would like to put a limit on those and get rid of the corporations that can come in and buy up 15 or 20 houses at one time because they got the money to do that. I think we should leave them to build the hotels that need to be built and leave the Airbnbs to the residents of 29 Palms, or even a person from LA can come up and buy a house. You know, it's okay. But not a big, huge corporation come up and buy all the houses that's left. If we put a cap at 500 right now, they say, oh, there's 264 and 122, that's 380, so there's 120 permits left. We're gonna go buy all those houses that are on the market, and we're gonna put in our bids for a permit for Airbnbs. I don't want that to happen. I want this to be for the people of 29 Palms and for a family that wants to come up and see if they can get an Airbnb going. I'd like to see technically on an increase in the fines, and I know I'm going to get it from the Airbnbs. But I think the higher the number, the more they're going to see that they need to make sure that their Airbnbs are run properly. And I would really like to see on that one that's 500, 1,000, 2,000. First violation, 1,000. Second violation, 2,000. Third violation, 3,000. I think getting the person in the pocketbook is going to make a big difference in making sure that their Airbnb is up to code and likes to, is going to be good for the neighborhood and for the people in 29 Palms. And the one night stay, I would have to go with that because it only takes one night and you're good to go for the whole year. So why not let the owners decide if they want to let one-nighters stay, you know, for one night or 2 nights or 3 nights. Let them decide. And I think I'll stop there and let somebody else bring other things up that maybe I might.
Councilmember Wright.
Well, I'm sorry, the fines, isn't that regulated by the state?
Yeah, the cap, the high is
The
5,000.
high.
You can't go any higher than that.
Well, I just wanted to let you know there was a cap somewhere.
I was on the committee, so most of the stuff in there, I already said what I had to say, and we got to this point. I'm going to speak about the ones that were my true heart's in, and want to make sure we can get that across, because I complain about everything, and nothing really justified. So the most owned, I would like to go with 5, because we looked at the paperwork the last couple weeks. I think the only person that's legitimately owning more than 3 or 4 is, I think, that gentleman that was here, unless someone else is lying. So 5 keeps him in good graces and keeps us from corporations buying us out. The cap, the percentage, I would like to go with 8%, no more than 10%. So if we can go find somewhere between them, that was my kind of recommendation where I wanted to go with this. And the no minimum days, you got, you know, 1 day stay. Being a young Marine here, my parents come up from down the hill to come visit me. They only want to stay 1 day, they want to stay here 2 days, so sometimes we got to get a hotel room separate from the barracks. So the 1 day stay worked out for us. So I understand the 1 day stays when you have your parents come to see you when you're a young Marine. They don't want to stay here too, believe me. Now that I'm older to live here, now they want to stay longer, but I don't know, back then they didn't. So I'm really for the 1 night, I'm cool with that, and 8 to 10%, and most you can own is 5. That's what I stand.
Councilmember Wright.
All right, well, since we just gonna hit it straight like that, so is, I would like the 1 night stay, because I can relate to, you know, parents coming to see you and not really wanting to stay where you are. So, and then I actually wanted the cap to be 7%, but I can work with between 8 and 10 too. And then I was going with 3 per owner, but to keep the gentleman in good standing, I'm good with 5. So.
I think we all took copious notes. I do like what Councilmember Klink said about just the 500 cap, and not so much as a percentage. But I can live with 10%. I do believe that owners should be able to have 4 or 5 homes, short-term rentals. And I'm also in agreement to increasing fines to make owners more responsible and not be so distanced from what is going on with their property. So that's where I'm standing.
Well, I guess I'll finish my comments then. So when I went into this, looking at the numbers, obviously from the valley, yeah, we have the least amount, which, and obviously we were the first ones who put regulations on this, thanks to some of the folks back in 2015, and it kept us from getting to, I believe, Joshua Tree is up to over 30%. So it's obviously that is not something that we're really interested in. At least I'm not. And I was teetering at 10%, but it sounded like some people were saying 8 to 10. So I could live at 9%. The only reason I would like to do the percentage is because luckily we do have some housing being built in 29 Palms, and that would keep us from having to adjust this. It would just keep it at, I guess, a percentage. 5 ownerships is good for me. Again, I didn't realize we had, I think when city manager told me we had 1 with 4, and the rest were 1 or 2. That would keep any corporation. And if anybody listened to me when this was being discussed at the original, I was talking about entities buying whole streets and making them into hotels. You can look it up. Those are my comments back then, that I was afraid that some corporation would buy a whole neighborhood and just make it a hotel, and they wouldn't have to put in the curb and gutter and other things. And then as far as the 1 night minimum stay, I mean, I guess it's for the person renting it out. My only comment is it's renting it out for 1 night or 2 nights. The 1 night's going to still cost you the same to clean it as for 2. So if they want to rent it for 1 night, I mean I guess it's up to them. So that's where I'm at. I definitely want a cap, and the percentage I guess we can discuss. And sound like 5 looks like a good number. And then the 1 night stand.
I just want to go back to why I say the 500, like Councilmember Fink said. With the percentage, if we build more houses, those get factored into that percentage as well. And so it's going to keep going up. But if we say 500, if need be, we can come back and revisit it.
And 500 with not going up until the census of 2030, which will build our houses stuff up, our housing numbers up.
What's 8%? What's that? A little over 500?
Yeah, so 500 is 8.6 on 5,800 homes. I just kind of rounded, but yeah, so that's 8.6.
We'll be there by the end of the month.
Where are we at now?
So it's 370 in total, I think, approximately, so including the pendings anyway.
We'll be there by the end of the month.
376.
Yes, yeah, so 370 on 5,800 is approximately 6.3%.
So then, we are voting on.
Yeah, so what I've heard, I think maybe take it, in pieces here, Madam Mayor, if that's okay. The cap, what I heard in my notes here, 8 to 10% and 500. So I maybe kind of grapple with that one first and give staff some recommendation on that one?
When you put a percentage, you have to keep going up every year.
Correct. Yeah, that is
So
correct.
if you put it at a
Just a steady.
just a steady 500 for the next 8 years, we can build our housing market up, and then in 10 years or 8 years, we can look at it again. That part of it.
So if you establish a hard number or a percentage.
I'm good with that.
I'm good with 500.
It's a ratio.
Okay, so then we're ready for a vote on that.
I make a motion?
Well, my suggestion is you take kind of a straw poll on these issues and make one motion at the end to incorporate all the changes that you're all agreeing on into the ordinance.
So 500.
It's a little nodding of the head. so that's-
Is that 500 with the not looking at it until 8 years?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Is that what the recommendation is?
Yes.
yeah, locking it in.
To the,
Lock it in
exactly,
until-
yeah, all in.
To the
Everything.
six.
So it's that nodding of heads. So I see consensus,
I'm good with, I mean, I can live with 500, it's because I'm not in that business. But, you know, percentage-wise, if all of a sudden we do, we're gonna put these 90 homes in, that it's gonna change the dynamic once those 90 are installed. And it's just percentage-wise, then it could be, because even if we did it at 8%, we're only talking, but it would go up proportionally. So, I mean, I can live with 500, but I'm just saying the percentage proportionally will make us have, for it to grow.
Yeah, but I agree with Joe in needing our long-term to grow faster.
Oh, absolutely, I'm
So,
in the long-term business.
yeah, so
So,
that's
yes.
why I think we need to do the 500.
No, I can live with it.
All right, then the next issue we need to discuss is how
Yeah.
many homes a person or an organization can have. And the gentleman that had 4, is he still here?
I'm okay with 5 as long as we get rid of the corporate people that can't buy.
I don't think we can, you can't.
How do you, how can we?
505?
You can't.
Yeah, that's gonna be unenforceable discrimination.
Okay, fine. I go with
I'm,
5.
I'm good with 5 entities owning property.
I'm good with 5.
Do you have a consensus there?
A 5 max limit. And what's the other one that we need to
One
discuss?
night minimum time.
Yeah, 1 night. I really.
If I could just, I'm sorry, if
Yes.
I could suggest, based on what I'm hearing you say in the amendment, it would be, or the change line would be 5 per permittee, and if it's a corporate entity, it's the entity or any affiliate entity. That way we can do a quick corporate search, and if the same person owns all 5 LLCs and they want to have 5 more, we'll have a way to track that.
Yeah, that's why you're invited tonight. Thank you, Patrick.
I actually understood what you said.
You
said exactly what I was thinking.
I stole your notes.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was discussed at the committee.
So then the next issue is the 1 or 2 nights. You know what, I'm kind of torn between that, because a person can hold up a permit for someone else and just rent it one time.
Yep.
And that's not a good thing. Because you have people who actually
throw a
want
percentage
to
in
do more, but you have that one person that has that permit, or that person has 5 permits and they're only doing 1 a year. So I think it needs to be more.
Yeah, but they could do 2 nights and still be the same thing. Because they could literally, like Frank said, I could literally rent my place 2 nights to you for $1 a night, and then pay TOT on $2 and still be good to go for the year.
What kind of regulation do other cities have regarding that?
Use it or lose it.
This issue tends to come up in connection with what we generally refer to as the good neighbor policy rules. And typically, cities want to have a minimum of 2 nights or more. You because it decreases the chances that you're gonna have someone renting it for a bachelor party or, big blowout one-night party where you tend to
New
have
Year's Eve
noise
party.
complaints and things like that. So, it's interesting hearing your discussion where, you guys have some unique issues out here, I think, largely because of the base, that are different than what I see in other cities. So it's a policy call. You've got to balance the needs of people who might want to have, just one night stays in a house as opposed to a hotel versus the downside of, the party palaces that can be created. We don't have party palaces.
Well, I guess economically, for someone to have a house for 364 days, only rent it once and have it vacant and not rent it more, I just don't know who would do that. Who's gonna only rent their house once, have a house, pay property tax, and to have all utilities on, which everybody knows there's a minimum on anything you do, and if you don't use your electricity or your gas or your water, there's a minimum every month. So I'm not sure how somebody would only rent a house for one day out of the entire year.
And just to give perspective of it, and just again, we're gonna accumulate all these costs, okay? But just the quick analysis of some of the costs associated with processing it at 370, which we currently have, again, all the costs. The permit fee is gonna be, around $400 a year, approximately. We'll refine that and bring it back to the council. So I guess back to that point, you're paying that money to hold up a license.
I mean, that's something we could track later on after we put all these new fees in and the new regulation, whether that's somebody wants to keep this, and then, just.
I see what you're saying, and I really didn't dawn on me, all these things that they have to pay taxes and insurance and everything on that house, and they're only gonna have it one night. I don't think very many will do that. I think they'll have more than one night. So, one night.
So I just want to be clear, because we're intermingling two topics here. So there's the use it or lose it policy, right? So if we get up to the 500 as the example, right, and somebody is not using the license, and let's say 20 people are waiting in line, somebody not using their license should get out of the way so one of those 20 people in line can get in there. And separate from that is that good neighbor policy as mentioned earlier. What do you want to require someone to stay one night is the minimum or 2 nights is the minimum? So two separate issues. Just want to make this clear.
Then I would go for the use it or lose it. If you have a license and you're not using it, then someone else should be allowed to use that license.
So if you turn, and so the way we would do it, from a staff perspective is you TOT form, you turn a 0 in for the year, that means, 2 years.
And then that
Well, if
could
we're gonna-
possibly become long-term rental.
And if we're gonna limit this to 500, that would be really the only fair way to make it for someone who does want to get into the business. I can go along with that.
Is that the consensus?
But we still have to discuss
The
the
one,
nights.
Correct, yeah, that's separate, yeah.
So the use it or lose it is what we're talking about first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good, I'm good with it.
So is that the consensus? Yeah. So again, administratively, that's how we would do it. Okay.
And as far as the 1 or 2 day, okay, I can live with the 1 day. I don't understand why someone would do that. Only rent a property 1 day out of 365 or 66. It's a neat year, but I can live with that.
Yeah, so Madam Mayor, just for clarification, so it's, so you as a guest, your minimum stay when you book it on Airbnb, VVRO, or whatever, vacation rental by owner, or VRBO, is it a minimum stay of only 1 day, or is it a minimum stay of 2 days?
I think because of the unique of our situation here, out here 1 day is fine because we
Because he
do
did bring
that.
up a good point about the military, when they come into town, I know when we came into town, we stayed at the Best Western at that time, and so in order to be able to book a house on Airbnb, you're coming with your children, that kind of makes a difference.
So 1 night minimum, is that the consensus? So Madam Mayor, if there is a, recommendation or a motion, I guess, pushing forward the ordinances as proposed with these amendments, and I can read these amendments here. It's a,
We talked about the fine increase.
oh, I'm sorry.
Where did you want, I thought you were going way over the city, or the state limits there, Joel, so what?
No, it was this one here, the.
Which one?
Right here. Fines haven't been increased.
Yeah, we increased them to, we doubled them all, 500,000 and 2,000.
Yeah, so I would say 1,000, 2,000, 3,000.
I said 1,000, 2,000, 5,000.
That one there, they're gonna be paying 5,000 if they don't have a license. These guys have a license, I don't think they have 5,000.
If they're repetitive and breakable.
Okay, as a business
But then
owner,
they're gonna be gone.
that would be really high fines, and sometimes it's not your fault when something happens. And I'm gonna tell you, it is not your fault when somebody does something in your business, but the boards at Bay will still find you, hold you responsible. I think that's a little high as a business owner, so I would not go with any of, I think these 5, 1,000, 2,000 will get somebody's attention. So I can't go along with an increase.
So what are you proposing?
The 500, the 1,000, and 2,000 that the committee came up with.
Okay, and you said 1, 2, 3.
I can go with any, but.
But these aren't businesses. Some of these are like just individual people.
I'm going with the committee because we did a long time with the fines, and even when we're trying to like make them, we increased them already. So that's why I gotta stay where we're at now, because we already did that common sense approach with the increasing, and now you're seeing it for the first time I get it, so you're thinking let's get them, but we already did this once, so now it's like tripling, and it's not fair.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And whoever spoke out, please don't do that. We're discussing, I gave the public an opportunity to speak, so please don't do that again. Thank you. So I'm willing to go with that.
So
Thank you.
500, 1,000, 2,000,
Yeah,
So
as
what you-
proposed.
As proposed, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And we didn't bring up about the feet. I'm okay with staying at 300. I mean, as long as the 300 feet to notify. I mean, we discussed it, but it was, obviously, listening to Travis is not, it's the way it works. We could have to change the whole city thing, and I'm okay with the way it lists. Especially since we're limiting this now to 500. I mean, we literally have cut this down more than anybody else has.
Okay. So then,
That's the consensus as well.
Yeah.
So, Madam Mayor, what I accumulated outside of what is proposed, 500 hard cap of VHRs, 5 per permittee or legal affiliate, use it or lose it policy. So again, just 0 when you turn it in, 1 night minimum, and then a 300-foot notification. Everything else is as proposed.
Do we want to put in with the TOT grant, if we want that in this one?
It'll be in the budget.
Another one.
Yeah, it's in the budget. So.
Yeah, we'll just take the money.
Just gonna second this.
all right, then I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion that all the changes that were discussed by this council at this evening, that was read by city manager.
Second.
Roll call?
So just to clarify, your motion is to introduce the ordinance with the changes that we just discussed.
Yes, I forgot, I have to say ordinance, yes. My motion is to introduce the ordinance, thank you, Patrick, with the changes that were made tonight by this council.
I'm just gonna read the ordinance by title only. Okay. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of 29 Palms, California, adopting a development code amendment, amending chapter 1941 vacation home rental of the City of 29 Palms Development. Roll call. Councilmember Bildery.
Aye.
Councilmember Miss.
Aye.
Councilmember Klink.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wright.
Aye.
Mayor O'Gilby.
Aye.
Approved 5-0.
Okay. Now, discussion and potential action items, community center rental fees,
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Now with Freedom Plaza open and our public spaces that are open, now we need to move into renting these.
Hello, can you please step outside if you have any comments?
Hold on.
Too loud? Can I say something? Or-
No.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Now with Freedom Plaza open, and the next step of Freedom Plaza, the inside space, the outside space, is renting of these facilities. Ms. Minitry is here this evening to kind of talk about a potential pathway for starting to rent it and the fees associated with it. And I just want to underscore this. This is something that probably will evolve, but we wanted to at least get something on the books because we are getting inquiries, probably daily maybe, of people who want to rent this.
More likely than that. So what I'm going to provide to you this evening is just an introduction to the process of renting a city facility and associated fees, requirements, etc. So our current facility rental fees and policies are use of facility application and reservation policy is required. A 14-day advance notice is required for all rentals of facilities. Applicants submit a completed application for approval to the Parks and Recreation Department. Applicants are notified within 1 business day of their status, and rental deposit and insurance fees. Payment of the fees and insurance policy must be provided 1 week prior to the event date. We also collect cleaning and damage deposits. These are collected for all facility rentals and are refundable if the facility is left undamaged and the facility does not exceed cleaning beyond normal use. And that's a typical fee of $125 for the cleaning and damage deposit. Insurance policies are required for rental of Patriotic Hall and Lucky Park Activity Center, as well as outdoor events with a bounce house or special events. The applicant must provide a certificate of insurance naming the City of 29 Palms as an additional insured on the policy. The amount of $1 million is the minimum. Just some information about the Lucky Park Activity Center and Patriotic Hall. Currently we have a 2-hour minimum rental, which is required for those facilities. The current fee for private event or nonprofit organizations is for the first 2 hours, it's $41. And each additional hour is $26. We have a weekend setup and breakdown service charge of $61. And then for profits, we charge a 3-hour rental minimum. That's $76 for the first 3 hours, and then each additional hour is $26. And the fees are calculated on the total hours of use of the facility. So for instance, if somebody rented it for a total of 5 hours, we would charge them the first fee for the 2 hours, and then for each additional hour thereafter. The kitchen rental, the only commercial kitchen that we have available right now for rental, and it's not rented out very often, is at Patriotic Hall. We charge a flat fee for rental for up to 8 hours, which is a total of $61 to rent the kitchen. And then each additional hour above the 8 hours, if they're going to be in there cooking all day, is $7 per each additional hour. So this fee for the kitchen at Patriotic Hall would also apply in addition to rental of the main room if it were desired. Our current electrical hookup and ball field light usage fees are $26, which is a flat fee for if somebody wanted to have a picnic with a bounce house. The ball field lights are $36 per field per hour of use. Special group events, we have an example is if somebody wants to rent out the soccer field or the skate park or open grass area at the parks for an event, we have a flat fee of $91. That's for an all-day use. 501c3 nonprofit organizations, we typically do not charge them, but we do require a 2-week advance notice, an application submission. They also have to provide us with a cleaning and damage deposit and insurance certificate if their activity is taking place in one of our indoor facilities. And if they're doing an outdoor facility with a bounce house, insurance would be required also. And as of right now, MUSD must also submit an application within 2 weeks for advance notice for our facilities as well. So moving on, we have some recommendations in regards to the new community center and stage outdoor plaza area at Freedom Plaza. And so we would just like to make a recommendation for the rental fees based off of the comparison of the rental fees for similar facilities at CMC or the Bell Center. They have a gymnasium of similar size. It's a little bit bigger, but that's the best place that we could locate to kind of replicate fees. So we're recommending a rental fee of $175 per hour for the first 2 hours. So that'd be equivalent to $350 for the first 2 hours. Cleaning and damage deposit of $125. Insurance policy would be required, and recommending a 30-day advance notice for reservations. And blackout dates would apply because we would have activities for the Parks and Recreation program that would take place in there on a regular basis. So the way we came up with this fee was, so $175 for the first 2 hours would cover, for the first hour would be covered wages. So it'd be the fully burdened hourly rate for a recreation coordinator is $28 per hour. They would be required to open the facility, electricity $36 per hour, and then cleaning and janitorial supplies, wear and tear at $111 per hour. It's really difficult for us to put a number on exactly how much wear and tear to charge. So we just kind of put it together, $28 per hour for opening and closing, electricity for the first hour, $36, and then each additional hour beyond the 2 hours would be, let's see here, $36 for electricity and $55 per hour, which would be half the cost of the cleaning, damage, supplies, wear and tear. So let's see, sorry, I'm having a hard time reading my notes here. So for the stage and courtyard at Freedom Plaza, the rental fee, we have a recommendation of $126. And we came up with that fee based off of the outdoor Rotary shelter at Lucky Park, which is the largest outdoor shelter that we have, which would be a flat fee per area. So you have 3 specific areas at Freedom Plaza. You have the stage, the courtyard, and then you have the plaza itself. So if somebody wanted to rent out, let's just say, the stage and the courtyard, it would be a $126 flat fee for each area. They would also have to pay the cleaning and damage deposit of $125, and of course, submit insurance policy, things of that nature. So we're just looking for any recommendations that you may have in regards to fees that we should charge, if you think they're too high, they're too low, or if they need to be adjusted. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have or take any suggestions that you have in regards to the fees for this facility.
Will the kitchen be available to rent out?
So we're still working on the MOU with the school district. So the answer is yes. We just don't have the MOU yet with them. Once that is in place, and they supply chain issues, right? So they've made the order. The school board has authorized the purchase of the equipment. I don't have a date yet on when that will arrive. I think they don't know that either, the school district. But the classes are supposed to start this fall. So between now and this fall, we've got to work on an MOU between us, the school district, and the K-12 and the community college to get those parameters. But the answer is yes.
So someone could rent out the gymnasium and the kitchen.
Yeah, more than
time. Is it going to be the same, or is it going to be more? I would imagine more.
Probably more. And the only thing that we talked about this, the reality of it, because it's a full commercial kitchen, but in reality, people aren't going to probably rent the gym for some kind of a graduation or whatever wedding. They'll probably have use it as a catering kitchen, right? So they'll hire a caterer to serve it out of there. That's more than likely what would happen. But yes, that would be available, and once we get the MOU together and the equipment's there, we'll be able to bring that back.
And not saying that it wouldn't happen, but we currently don't have hardly any rentals for people wanting just to rent the kitchen only at patriotic hall. Not saying that that won't happen at Freedom Plaza because it's a beautiful space, and there's a lot of really nice equipment in there. Not saying it wouldn't happen, but we would have to, you know, kind of make sure that our scheduling doesn't conflict for use of the kitchen with any other events that are taking place in there through MUSD or CMC. It'd be probably a very limited.
So could you make this scroll down a little bit for?
No, I don't have control of
Oh,
it.
you can do it.
What do you want to see, Dean?
Just keep going down a little further. So I guess I just want to clarify, no, keep going down, 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 down. I want to see the other way. The other way. I'm sorry. You go
Oh,
up.
you mean up?
You go up. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so when we're saying it's 175 for the first 2 hours, which would be 350, when you broke this down, it's not hour 2, that's just how you broke down the 2 hours, right?
Yes,
You're not saying that they're gonna pay that in addition to the minimum fee?
No, so.
Okay, that's just the way you broke, okay.
Yeah, that's just the way I broke it.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Just to kind of give you an idea of how I came up with those figures.
You got a nexus of what you were charging, I got it.
Yes.
I have a question.
Okay,
You can let those doors up.
50/50.
So then is that little courtyard area going to be available also?
I would assume so, yes, if you're going to rent the gymnasium, but it would be an additional fee, so that would be part of the plaza area.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you wanted to rent that in conjunction with, let's say you're wanting the indoor gym facility, you would have to pay the separate fee for that as well.
And is the flooring going to be okay, say, if it's a wedding and they have heels on?
No,
and-
they would have to put down a protective visqueen or something of that nature.
Like they do at the Bell Center?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
Who was the responses that?
Who would be responsible for laying down the visqueen? We would.
Oh.
We would be responsible for that.
You said they, I'm like.
Well, sorry.
Okay.
Yes, we.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then next, I apologize, public. Anyone from the public have any questions?
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to get back up here. But you know what, the thing with the Airbnbs, it's not the,
We are past that week, we're further in the agenda now, so no Airbnb. You can talk about the Freedom Plaza and what you might want to rent.
I'm good with that.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Good try though.
We still have general
Alright,
comments.
so back to the council.
You ready for a motion?
Yes.
I'm gonna make the motion that we accept the staff's community center rental fees for Freedom Plaza.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Klink,
Aye.
Councilmember Mintz,
Aye.
Councilmember Bildering,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wright,
Aye.
Mayor Ogilvy.
Aye.
Approved by vote.
Alright. Next is equity and social justice element of the general plan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So staff is recommending that the city council appoint a 5-person general plan advisory committee, a GPAC, to guide and to provide input on the new equity and social justice element of the city's general plan. Just by way of quick background, and I'll turn it over to our consultant, John Christie, with Terra Nova, who will lead this discussion. But just by way of quick background, the council, through a future agenda item request, provided direction to the council that wanted to add a element to our general plan to address these items, equity and social justice. Within that policy direction was an allocation of resources, $42,800 to be able to implement this policy. The policy, as going to be discussed, will be completed by the end of this calendar year, and staff would be happy to answer any questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over.
Testing 1, 2.
Where's that? Move it forward.
I'm so tech challenged. Madam Mayor, members of the council, John Christ, Terra Nova Planning and Research, 42635 Melanie Place in Palm Desert. excuse me, I'm a Pennsylvania transplant from about 40 years ago, almost 45 years ago now, and have had a pretty broad planning experience. My wife and I have a small planning business in Palm Springs area, in the Coachella Valley, and we've been practicing for almost 40 years in all kinds of communities. We specialize primarily in smaller communities in Southern California, but we've worked all over the country. This element that we've been contracted to work with the city in developing is required by a new law that was passed in about 2016, I believe, Senate Bill 1000. And it's kind of the legislative end of a long tradition that was trying to address, and has been very difficult to address, environmental inequities primarily across the country, where chemical plants, petroleum operations, different types of environmental hazards were introduced into areas where the population were less capable of defending themselves or having political influence. And so, unfortunately, we had to legislate to provide some of those protections. The state passed guidelines, the state rather drafted guidelines through the Office of Planning and Research in the governor's office, and opened it up to a broader consideration of what social justice means. And we have, in our scope of work, we intend to do a comprehensive evaluation of issues of equity and social justice. So instead of calling it an environmental justice element, it was suggested by city staff that maybe equity and social justice would be a better name. And we'll be including all the full spectrum of considerations that are to be made. And on your right, you can see it even has to do with such things as nutrition, healthcare. Tonight you were talking about access to housing and affordability. That's a very important part of this whole discussion that we'll be having with the community. I just turned it off.
So if you, point over there.
This is a general plan map that also shows your sphere of influence. Because the city took it upon themselves to master plan your sphere of influence, which is a great idea, the extent or the breadth of this program needs to include the sphere of influence as well, so you can see the entire area. And since we have the base in the city limits, we'll be looking at that too, but it will probably have a limited influence on the document. The state, as only big government can do, has broken this up into a couple of different pieces, but it has to do with disadvantaged communities. And it is, can we identify groups, be they just a function of population, and I think its smallest is a population area of like 12 persons, but groups that are geographically and otherwise identifiable that are low income. That would be 80% of median state income. I think a household of $60,000 a year would fall into that category. So that's one of the most basic parameters, and the exhibit we're showing here is essentially showing that most of the official disadvantaged communities occur in our sphere of influence, but not in the city limits. All that's kind of to the side, I think. We're going to talk about the real issues that face the community and how we can address them. The sorts of things we'll be looking at are like population and ethnicity. We have the new census that we'll be mining that data. Employment and income, opportunities that are kind of comparative advantage that we have in 29 Palms, access to education, very big predictor of income, housing availability discussed today, more access to commercial services and commercial products so that people don't have to drive to Yucca Valley for so much of their needs, for instance. Healthcare, we have high desert here, and we're going to examine access to healthcare in general. Environmental hazards is a very standard area of concern and review, and was, as I mentioned, really gave birth to the social equity issue. Climate change, the park's going to be affected perhaps, we're all going to be affected. It's going to affect our ability to have resilient communities, and how can we not only protect those who are most disadvantaged, but protect all of us from those adverse effects. And then access to equal representation. This is really important, that people who don't have a lot of influence have ways of being heard and considered. I think that's pretty much it. We have a schedule that you've seen, and as the city manager pointed out, we're working to meet throughout the summer with your, we're hoping you appoint a 5-person committee, and that before the end of the year we'll have brought a draft document for you to adopt. And some of our last slide is really what are the kind of resources you already have in the community that could be tapped to help advise, and maybe folks from some of these backgrounds could be considered when you're looking to assemble your committee. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
And Madam Mayor, just to further that, so what staff will be looking for maybe the next council meeting, so 2 weeks from now, is, so think about it over the next 2 weeks for that appointment of that GPAC.
Any questions?
Does it matter how many council, 2 council members, 2 planning commission, or just, you want all 5 that are not even on the council or planning commission?
Yeah, so people from the community and those various backgrounds, because we want those lenses to be in different areas of the community outside of our government.
Then I'll open it to the public.
Thank you very much.
Any questions from the public? Close it from the public. Back to the city.
Yeah, no, so the next meeting, so think about it over the next week, next 2 weeks, then we'll bring it back to that point. So.
And then I think we are ready for the future council initiated items. Does any council members have anything else they would like to add for future council initiatives?
Not to add, but we're sure getting the shopping car lots out there again.
Yeah, so just to give an update on that, so we're going to be contracting that out, you know, to bring something in front of the committee, to the council. So we are farming that out. You know, with development and all the things that are kind of going on, you know, we're at capacity, so that's where we're going to start putting that out.
So the shopping center's not responsible for the carts or the city?
Well, you know, so by way of example, you know, you could have a policy that, you know, puts a penalty on them for, you know, them leaving their facility.
Make sure they be contracting somebody to go get their stuff?
Well, they're
not
expensive. Yeah, they're expensive. So that's the question that will be in front of the council from a private market perspective, because those things are expensive, or fining them to.
Well, instead of finding, could we put a proposal together, what we could contract out to?
Yes. So, you know, since we have the city attorney here, we have limited conversation on, it's not on the agenda, but yeah, all those things.
You blame me for
Yeah, go up, yeah.
Steve Brady's car pickup might
It's
just
coming,
get
it's coming
It's
back.
coming.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
How much you paying? I got a truck.
I have nothing else.
Okay. All righty. So now, public comments. This is the time for the public to address the city council on issues within the jurisdiction of the city council that are not on this agenda. All comments are to be directed to the city council and shall not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional, courteous decorum during their comments. There is a time limitation of 3 minutes per person. If you haven't already done so, please fill out name and address slips and give them to the city clerk. the city council is prohibited by state law from taking action or discussing items not included on the printed agenda. Public comments on specific agenda items will be deferred until consideration of the item on the agenda. Grant, Ray? No Grant, Ray? Okay, Elvis has left the building, okay. Then next, we're ready for our city manager update.
And I'll be brief, because I know we've gone past our 2 hours that we try to hit. Just a couple updates, I think things of, excitement. So the Lucky Park Pool, our bid closes May 24th. So that's a couple more weeks that will close, so we'll be able to see what that bid provides, so we can start construction. Then also too, the Channel Trail. The Channel Trail, the bid closes May 26th, so again, same with that. So 2 exciting projects that are coming forward. We'll see construction after the big closing this month. I think it was mentioned a few times today about the visitor center, Joshua Tree National Park Cultural Center, opened this weekend with success. So we're very excited about our public partners in our Freedom Plaza area. The farmers market is growing. The businesses are expanding, so success to the council and your vision on the downtown, so it's being realized. The city continues. I know a lot of talk about housing tonight. We continue to work on that fourplex that we bought through Home Key. Lots of bureaucracy as it relates to federal dollars. These were federal dollars that came down through to us. And displacement, as was talked a lot about tonight, is taken very seriously, because that fourplex was occupied, is occupied. So we're going to be very diligent, with that, as required by the law, but also compassionate as well. And as I said, I was going to be brief, and that's all. Actually, one more comment, because I know Councilmember Mintz asked me earlier, so just to inform the entire council, is the shade structure that the council approved for Lucky Park. I saw you leaning over, so you maybe were going to ask that question. So we're expecting that to be complete. We're going through the process, but we're expecting that to be complete by late summer, August, maybe early fall, September. So this calendar year.
Yeah, season's over. But I had 2 things on here. The other one was the Caltrans on Twin Palms Highway at Staters. Do you know if they're making progress on that?
Yes, so that Medium Island, working through the process with Caltrans, we do have, we're working on our permit with Caltrans, the encroachment permit with Caltrans. Once that that encroachment permit is approved, then we will go out to bid on it. The completion date on that is expected to be, again, same time frame, August, September of this calendar year.
Anything else?
Now with the shopping center, the State of Rose area, that's coming, we talked about a gas station on that side?
No, yeah, we've, the city has, tried to, like the property that we have on the west side of town, on Lear Avenue, where we own the billboard. We've tried to get, gas station operators to look at that, but, we haven't had any luck on attracting any gas station operators on the west side of town, thus far.
We're going electric. Who's going to build a gas station in
Well,
California?
And that's probably part of the problem, right? I'm sure. Right? The investment that's needed.
Maybe a charging station or something?
Yeah, let's make it a charging station.